This next segment covers the preparation for a penetration test, and obviously that involves some management processes and some close supervision to make sure that you and your team are ready and the organization is ready for the test itself. Preparation is probably the most important part of a penetration test, simply because if you don't get this right, there's a lot of things that can go wrong during a penetration test, and you don't want that to happen. One of the big things involved in preparation is getting the legal agreement in place saying that you actually can legally hack into the organization and their systems. If you don't have this and it's discovered that you do this anyway, if you do the hack anyway or the test, you could go to jail or be fined or encounter any number of legal difficulties. So you would get the legal agreement, obviously, but also preparation involves getting the scope, the schedule, and the limitations for the test. And this involves close work with the organization back and forth. Now, as I said, preparation can make the difference between a well-executed test and one that is incomplete or yields undesirable results. And by undesirable results, at minimum, that could mean that you don't get a contract back again and that your reputation is questioned. But you could also get into trouble legally if a penetration test goes wrong because of lack of preparation. Now, the most important aspect of this preparation step are the legal agreements and the non-disclosure agreements, if necessary. And that's typically signed and executed by someone with the legal authority to do so, both on your team and in the organization that you're conducting the test on. So Joe Schmo from the IT department probably isn't the person who can execute this agreement. It probably has to be someone in executive management with the company, maybe the chief legal officer or the chief security officer or someone of that nature. So make sure that this agreement is reviewed and signed by someone who can do it, who can speak for the company and for your team. You will do this, you'll conduct this agreement through meetings with your customer. And these meetings should also establish the scope of the test, what exactly you're doing, what systems you're hitting, the schedule. Maybe it'll tell you that you have 30 days to do it or 1 week to do it or whatever. The type of test that you'll execute, whether it's a full-on penetration test, whether it's a black box, white box, whatever. You'll also get the objectives for the test. And some of those objectives you may have as the team, and some of those objectives the customer may have. So you have to negotiate those. You'll also find out restrictions and limitations on the test, things you can't do. Another step in preparation involves determining the type of skills that you need for the test. You have to bring the right people to this. You can't bring folks who don't know how to do the test, don't know penetration testing or hacking, and don't know how to do it properly. You also will need to configure and test your equipment to make sure it's running properly, that it has the right tools. And by right tools, I mean tools that don't cause unintended consequences to the target systems, or don't just mess up the test on their own because they're faulty. You also want to make sure that you have licensed copies of everything you're using. The other thing you might want to do during the preparation step is to coordinate with the customer security and administration personnel as you need to. Now, in some cases, if this is a test where only certain people know about it, like the chief security officer, for example, that might not be a possibility. They may not want you to coordinate with the customer security administration personnel because part of the test is seeing how they'll react to a hack attack. So that might be something you do or don't do depending upon how the test is laid out. Now, these preparation steps, and this is just in general, some of these will go in a different order based upon your interactions with the customer. But the big thing up front probably is to get the legal agreement and the contract signed, because that paves the way for you to do everything else. Establish your rules of engagement, and these rules of engagement basically are what you can and can't do on the test. This is basically the agreement itself, part of the agreement. You know, things you can attack, things you can't, tools you can use or can't use, to what level or depth you will penetrate, and so forth. And this is negotiated between you and the customer. Obviously, you'll determine the scope, which systems you're after, which parts of the organization, the schedule, your time frame. Maybe you're only allowed to test during the night when operations aren't going on, or maybe you have 1 week to do it. So the schedule will help you determine that. Also, again, the type of test, whether it's a black box, white box, gray box, how deep the test goes and so forth. You'll want to schedule your assets and your people, your own team, and you'll want to schedule the operations in conjunction with the target organization, because maybe they don't want you to test during a particular time of day because their operations are critical. You want to establish objectives for the test, both your objectives as the team and the organization's objectives. And usually your organization objectives will drive what you as the team does. The organization may have certain objectives they want out of the test, like to see, for example, if a particular system can be penetrated. So you would establish your objectives toward that. You obviously want to prepare your testers and your equipment to make sure that they're trained, equipped, and ready to go. Develop your strategy, your penetration test strategy based upon the scope and the type of test. The strategy will pretty much tell you what you're going to do during the test and how you'll do it. You also want to study the target information if you have it. Now, if this is a black box test, you may not have this information, but any information you can get during the course of the preparation or the negotiation, you should study that information if you possibly can. You also want to develop checklists and procedures for the test. Now, you may have generic tests and procedures that you'll run, but based upon the particulars of this test, you may want to develop certain specific ones for the types of systems or restrictions or limitations that you may have. So these are all things that you'll do during the prep phase of the penetration test, the pre-attack phase, if you will.